Whoopi Goldberg, who, by the way, I hope is still a friend, we can disagree with each other, should not be canceled or put off her show, as much as I totally disagree with her crazy statement. Free speech. She should be there. She shouldn't get a timeout.
Not every single thing has to be for everybody.
Right.
We can have platforms that have stuff on them that not everyone on that platform or who consumes stuff on that platform enjoys. And The View is a particularly weird place to do a cancellation.
But Walters invented it a long time ago, but it's The View.
Well,
that's the problem in America.
But
there is one.
What happens when two of America's biggest cultural voices, Bill Maher and Whoopi Goldberg, suddenly clash over free speech, immigration, and cancel culture? This isn't reality TV drama. It's a real feud that could change the way we look at public debate in America. And it all started with one explosive comment from Arnold Schwarzenegger. Picture this: Bill Maher and Whoopi Goldberg, two towering figures in American pop culture, each with their own brand of influence, are suddenly at odds in a way that feels far more explosive than a simple disagreement. These two were never inseparable friends, but there was always a thin layer of professional respect holding things together. Now, that surface has cracked wide open, and what's pouring out isn't just petty banter, it's high-voltage drama. We're not talking about some staged reality TV spat. This is a collision of ideologies, traded barbs in public, and a stark reminder that in today's cultural climate, even long-standing mutual respect can crumble under pressure. So, what lit the fuse? Surprisingly, it all traces back to a guest appearance by none other than Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yes, the Governator himself, on The View. For context, Arnold's no stranger to reinvention. He arrived in America with little more than ambition and maybe, as Bill Maher quipped, a jar of protein powder. From there, he built the immigrant dream into a global empire. And that backdrop is exactly what sparked the clash between Maher and Goldberg.
What is the panel's reaction to Arnold Schwarzenegger saying that immigrants should behave like guests? Well, they're truncating that a little, but that is basically what he said. And he is, of course, an immigrant himself. He came here with nothing but a loincloth and a jar of... and a jar of protein powder, and look how far he got. I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it.
I completely agree.
Fast forward to today, and Schwarzenegger's story is the definition of the American dream: Hollywood royalty, a former governor, and a household name across the globe. So when he dropped the line that immigrants should act like guests, it was peak Arnold, blunt, unapologetic, and, to many, just plain common sense. But not to Whoopi. To her, the remark wasn't straightforward. It was patronizing, condescending, and a slap in the face to immigrant communities. And if you've ever tuned into The View, you know dissent doesn't exactly float easily at that table. When Arnold doubled down, Whoopi's irritation was unmistakable. The tension could have been cut with a knife. And to Bill Maher. Instead of diffusing the situation, he did what Maher always does: jumped right into the fire. He publicly backed Arnold, calling the statement fair, reasonable, even obvious. That, for Whoopi, was the tipping point. Her frustration wasn't just about disagreeing with Arnold anymore, it was about Maher co-signing what she saw as a worldview that diminished immigrants. For her, that wasn't just tone-deaf, it was hostile. And in that moment, what little alliance existed between Maher and Goldberg began to look like a bridge burned beyond repair.
Sometimes have a very different opinion. And the answer is not to make them sit in a corner for 2 weeks. That is insulting. It's so insulting to make a 65-year-old, the person at ABC News said, I've asked her to take time to reflect and learn about the impact of her comments. Reflect. How insulting for someone of her age, who's a sophisticated person, and the impact of her comment. There is no impact. There aren't neo-Nazis waiting for the green light from the lady on The View to go out and do a new crystal knot.
Yeah, no, it's so right. And the whole point of free speech is we don't need free speech when we're right, when everyone agrees with us. We need free speech when we're wrong.
Let's be honest for a moment. Was Arnold really out of line? Think about it. If you're invited into someone's home, you show respect. You don't wreck the place, ignore the rules, or act like the host owes you something. That's not a radical concept, it's basic courtesy. And yet, somehow, saying immigrants should carry themselves like respectful guests has been twisted into something scandalous. That's exactly why Maher stood his ground. He didn't sugarcoat it, he didn't dress it up in politically correct language, he simply agreed. To Whoopi, that was crossing a line. But here's where it gets interesting. Maher, for all his bluntness, didn't call for her to be silenced or cancelled. He didn't demand ABC kick her off the air or banish her from Hollywood. Quite the opposite. He defended her right to speak, even when he thought she was dead wrong. In his words, free speech isn't about protecting popular opinions, it's about safeguarding the right to be unpopular, even offensive. If everyone agrees with you, you don't need protection. The real test comes when someone says something people despise. And on that principle, Maher argued, Whoopi belongs at the table, no matter how wild her take might be. The irony, of course, is that Whoopi doesn't seem to extend the same courtesy. She's fearless when voicing her own views, but when someone else challenges her ideological bubble, or worthy of cancellation. Just look at The View. It doesn't function like a space for honest debate. It operates more like an echo chamber wrapped in the packaging of political discussion. And that's really the catch with The View. Notice the title. It's not the views, plural. It's singular for a reason. Because most of the time, only one perspective dominates that table. Anyone daring to think differently is usually met with eye rolls, sarcastic jabs, or outright dismissal. It's less about conversation and more about conformity. Think about the so-called conservatives they rotate in. Take Alyssa Farah Griffin, for example. She isn't there to actually shift the debate, she's there as a foil. The moment she opens her mouth, you can practically feel Sunny Hostin's glare slicing through her like a laser. It doesn't play out like a healthy exchange of ideas. It plays out like a firing squad dressed up as daytime television. And audiences are expected to swallow this as some shining example of democracy in action? Please. At best, it's performance politics. At worst, it's an echo chamber pretending to be open dialogue. The irony is, this dynamic mirrors a bigger problem in America itself. Too many conversations are framed as if only one acceptable viewpoint exists. Step outside that bubble, and suddenly you're branded with the ugliest labels. But the truth is far more complicated than the narrative of racism and misogyny that gets tossed around every election cycle. Plenty of voters, especially in working-class communities without college degrees, don't fit neatly into those stereotypes. For many, it's not about bigotry, it's about survival. People cast ballots for the candidate they believe will give them a better shot at providing for their families. Dismissing that reality as nothing more than prejudice doesn't just miss the point. It alienates millions of Americans who feel unseen, unheard, and written off. Let's break this down. Bill Maher thrives on debate. He lives for it. Even when he thinks Whoopi is completely wrong, his instinct isn't to silence her. He wants the conversation. That's why this feud isn't just two celebrities trading barbs. It's a snapshot of the cultural tug-of-war defining America right now. On one side, you've got people like Maher who, love him or hate him, still defend the principle of open dialogue. On the other, you've got people like Whoopi who champion diversity, but only until it extends to diversity of thought. The moment someone challenges the sacred narratives, the tolerance disappears. Suddenly you're not just wrong. You're a bigot, a villain, or erased entirely. It's not about discussion, it's about control. Think about the broader implications. Imagine if even one cast member on The View or Saturday Night Live openly supported Trump. Do you honestly believe they'd feel comfortable saying so? Of course not. They'd have to keep quiet, because stepping outside the bubble comes with social consequences. That's not healthy for a free society. I remember when Elon Musk hosted SNL years ago, long before he was ever branded a Trumper. He was simply the world's richest man, yet some cast members wanted nothing to do with him. Instead of engaging him on the very issues they claimed to care about, like wealth inequality, they avoided him altogether. That's the part of the left that drives people crazy, the refusal to even have the conversation. And all of this is happening against the backdrop of heated immigration debates, Kamala Harris's rocky tenure as border czar, and Trump's unexpected gains with minority voters. Democrats used to see those communities as untouchable strongholds. But the numbers tell a different story. Trump is making inroads where they never thought he could. And instead of asking why, many on the left are doubling down on the same dismissive tactics that are pushing voters away in the first place. Here's the problem. The women of The View act as if every critique of Kamala Harris boils down to racism or misogyny. That's not only lazy, it's flat-out wrong. Yes, Harris would break multiple barriers if elected. The first woman president, the first black woman president, the first Asian American president. But voters don't pull the lever for someone simply to make history. They vote for the person they think can win, the one they believe can improve their lives. And the hard truth is this: Harris has never been popular. In the 2020 primaries, her campaign collapsed so fast you could count her delegates on a hand with no fingers.
Is that fair? No. She's smart, accomplished, and polished.
But when she was tasked with overseeing the border, the results spoke louder than the resume, and not in her favor. Voters aren't motivated by abstract hatred. They care about jobs, safety, stability, and the chance to provide for their families. And when Democrats dismiss those concerns as bigotry, they risk alienating the very communities they claim to represent.
But you'll never hear that acknowledged at The View. Look at how the party has tried to sell Harris.
She wasn't the voters' choice in the primaries, yet she was elevated anyway, and then packaged with flashy celebrity endorsements. Megan Thee Stallion, Lil Jon, you name it, as if that would magically deliver votes from black men. But here's the kicker. In places like Texas, 1 in 3 black men voted for Donald Trump in 2020. That's the highest Republican share in history. Call it what you want, but it signals a seismic shift the left can't afford to ignore. No question about it. Trump improved his standing with minority voters every time he ran. That shift is real, and it's reshaping the political map. So where does that leave the Maher Whoopi feud? At this point, it's bigger than 2 TV personalities trading shots. It's really about what kind of public discourse we want in America. Do we settle for echo chambers where dissent is ridiculed and silenced? Or do we embrace debate that's messy, uncomfortable, but ultimately honest? Maher, love him or hate him, has clearly chosen the latter. His stance is simple. Even if I think you're completely wrong, you still get to speak. Whoopi, on the other hand, seems locked into the reflex of cancel culture, ready to scold, shame, or exile anyone who drifts too far from her script. That's why their feud resonates. It's not just personal, it's political, cultural, and symbolic of the fight over free speech itself.
Here's the twist, though. Despite all the heat, Maher still calls Whoopi a friend.
He's not asking for her to be cancelled, silenced, or thrown off the air. What he wants is something far more important, an acknowledgement that disagreement doesn't equal erasure. In a climate where cancel culture dominates, that's a surprisingly radical position. Because not everything has to be for everybody, and not every difference has to end in exile. Look, not every platform has to cater to every single taste. That's the point of free expression. Some content will resonate, some won't. And honestly, The View is a strange stage to play the cancellation game on. So let me put the question to you. Whose side are you on? Is Maher right to defend free speech, even when it protects ideas we can't stand? Or is Whoopi right that certain statements cross a line and shouldn't be tolerated? Drop your take in the comments, because this feud isn't just about 2 TV veterans, it's about the culture we're all living in. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives, and share it with someone who thrives on a good cultural clash. But let's step back for a second. Because here's the truth. The Maher Whoopi showdown isn't just a celebrity spat. It's a mirror reflecting the biggest question facing America today. Do we still believe in open dialogue, or are we letting outrage mobs decide who gets to speak? Either way, the sparks are flying, and something tells me it's only just beginning.
Think about it.
Bill Maher has built his career on debate. Agree or disagree with him, his brand is rooted in pushing conversations into uncomfortable territory. He'll spar with conservatives, challenge progressives, and often find himself in the middle where no one is entirely happy with him. And that's kind of the point. He believes that in a democracy, friction is healthy. Discomfort is the cost of free expression. Whoopi Goldberg, on the other hand, represents a different side of the cultural coin. She's no stranger to controversy herself, but in moments like this she embodies a stance that's increasingly common. Some ideas are just too offensive to be allowed airtime. For her, Schwarzenegger's "immigrants should behave like guests" comment wasn't simply blunt, it was insulting, dismissive, and harmful to immigrant communities. And when Maher backed Arnold's view instead of condemning it, she saw that as crossing a moral line. And that's where the real clash begins. Because we're not just debating immigration policy here. We're debating whether the principle of free speech still applies when someone says something you absolutely hate. Maher's position is clear: yes, it does. In fact, that's when it matters most. Whoopi's position is equally clear: no, some things should be off-limits because of the harm they cause.
Sound familiar?
That's because it's the same battle playing out in college campuses, workplaces, and online spaces across the country. The same arguments about cancel culture, free speech, hate speech, and inclusivity are being fought everywhere. And in that sense, Maher and Whoopi aren't just 2 celebrities, they are avatars of the larger struggle. So here's the real question for you. What kind of culture do we want to live in? A culture where we protect the right to speak, even when the words make us cringe, or a culture where we prioritize protecting people from offense, even if that means silencing certain viewpoints? It's not an easy call, and that's what makes it fascinating. Maher isn't exactly warm and fuzzy. He can be abrasive, smug, and downright infuriating. But he's consistent in one area. He doesn't believe people should lose their platforms for bad takes. He has openly defended the rights of people he despises because, as he says, free speech isn't needed when everyone agrees with you. It's needed when they don't. Whoopi, meanwhile, voices a concern that resonates with a lot of people too: words have consequences. They shape public perception. They can fuel hostility. And if platforms give a megaphone to the wrong message, the damage doesn't just stay in the studio. It spreads into the real world. From her perspective, dismissing that impact as just debate is irresponsible. And maybe that's why this feud feels so electric. It crystallizes the tension between two competing values: the freedom to speak versus the responsibility to protect. Both sound noble, but they can't always coexist neatly.
Now, let's zoom out even further.
Notice how quickly this conversation about a TV feud touches on politics, race, immigration, and identity. That's because in today's America, everything is political. Even daytime talk shows are no longer about celebrity gossip or feel-good stories. They are battlegrounds for cultural dominance. And when those battlegrounds get ugly, the rest of us are left to pick sides, whether we want to or not. But here's the twist that makes this all the more intriguing. Despite the back and forth, Maher still calls Whoopi a friend.
He's not campaigning to get her booted from The View. He doesn't want her silenced.
In fact, he explicitly defends her right to say things he completely disagrees with. That's not weakness, it's principle. And in an age where outrage mobs demand exile for every wrong opinion, that kind of consistency stands out.
So what does this mean for us?
Maybe it's a reminder that we don't have to fear disagreement. That debate, real debate, not shouting matches or echo chambers, still has value. Maybe it's a call to toughen up, to accept that free speech means we'll sometimes hear things that offend us, and that's okay. Because let's be honest, if every offensive statement becomes grounds for erasure, none of us will survive the purge. Everyone has said something someone else finds intolerable. Everyone has a view that would make another person's blood boil. If we start drawing lines too tightly, eventually we're all on the wrong side of someone's boundary. That's why this feud matters more than it seems. It's not just Maher versus Whoopi. It's about you, me, and the country we're building. Are we going to lean into open dialogue, even when it's messy and raw? Or are we going to keep narrowing the boundaries of acceptable speech until only one safe viewpoint remains? The answer to that question will shape far more than one TV show. It will shape the future of public discourse in America.
So, whose side are you on?
Do you lean Maher, defending free speech no matter how uncomfortable it gets? Or do you lean Whoopi, drawing lines to protect communities from words that wound?
Drop your thoughts below. I want to hear them.
And if this breakdown got you thinking, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Because whether you love this feud or hate it, one thing's for sure, it's not over.
Not by a long shot.
And neither is the bigger conversation about who gets to speak, who decides the rules, and whether we're still a country that values dialogue over dogma. The sparks are flying, and I, for one, am here for it.